Hey guys, what's up? So we are back, and so on the last video we basically set up our installation for Okta and make sure that we have the stuff that we need to work with. So now we're gonna actually start implementing this stuff. Okay, so let's do some setup on the actual application, right? So we can have the files that we're going to need. So I know that I'm going to be using a home page, which is going to be my landing page, what everyone is going to land on, and that one obviously needs to be a public page, not a protected one. We're going to need a login page that is going to run our application widget, so that you can log in. We're going to need, and then we're going to need a profile page, which is going to be our secure page, which is the page that no one is going to be able to access unless they log in first. Okay. So let's go ahead and start adding that inside components. Actually, let's use pages. So inside of SLC folder, we're gonna go ahead and add a component, and we're gonna call it pages. And then inside pages, we're going to add which one? Home? Okay, let's add home.js and RAFCE. Remember, I talked about this in the last video. If you don't have it, make sure you install this extension. And there it is. Hit save. We're gonna close it for now, and then we're gonna go back to pages, add the same thing again for login. Okay, for login, because this could get confusing with login, that is going to be something that Okta is going to use, like an instruction, a function, I say. So we don't get confused, let's just call this custom login. So let's call it custom login.js. It'll make it a little bit easier to explain. Oops, I messed up, so rename this custom login. There we go. And again, same thing, RAFC, that one, custom login. Okay, cool, everything's good. Close it, we're not gonna need it. And then the last one is going to be profile.js. All right, and RAFCE, profile, control S, cool. All right, so we are good there. And we're gonna close it, we're not gonna need it. So now we are in our app.js, right? So before we go into the app.js, let me go ahead and close this. Yeah, let's close this header for now. We're not gonna need it. Let's go into the index.js first, because we need to add a router, right? And to add a router, we're gonna add the router at this level so that we have access to the router at the highest level possible, right? At the biggest scope. So I am going to import browser router as router, and that is going to come from React router DOM. There you go. So browser router as router from React router React router DOM. It's not dumb, it's DOM. React router DOM. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and move this in here. Take that out and put router in there. So now our application is able to router. Alright, so go ahead and save that. And that's really not gonna do anything because we're not really routing into anything. So it's not gonna do anything to our application, or that just whatever, right? It's gonna work in behind the scenes, but not yet. Alright, so we can actually close this. I don't think we need anything else in here. Not that I can think of. Making sure, follow my notes. Yeah, alright, looks fine. Alright, close that out. And now we're gonna work into the app.js itself. So here we're gonna do a few more stuff than we did in the index. So we're gonna need to add the router also in here. So let's go ahead and bring it above the components. So we're gonna import route. Yeah, route. We're gonna import useHistory. and we're gonna import switch, and this is all from React router DOM. All right, cool. And we're going to import Okta, what is it, Okta auth. We're gonna import Okta auth and to relative URL, and that's gonna come from Okta, not form, that's why it's not picking it up, from Okta React Okta.js. Yeah, Okta auth.js. The next one we're gonna need is going to be security from Okta, this one. So this security here, let's just move it up to the top. Let's just delete this. And that's not gonna come from bundles, so we're gonna get rid of this Okta React. All right, so we're gonna need security, we're gonna need secure route, and we're gonna need login callback. We're gonna need all of those. Okay, what else? All right, so we have those, and then now we're going to, we're gonna need to bring our import configurations, our configs, and we call that, let's go, where is it? We call that Okta config. All right, so we're gonna come over here and import Okta config from config right there. Let's put it up above it, and now we're gonna bring our views. So his home. Oh, it's not giving me. All right, so home, let's import it like this then. Import home from pages, which is also going to be here. All right, cool. Now let's copy that and paste it a couple more times. We're going to bring in our custom, actually let's do this. Highlight home and then Control D, and then it selects both of them at the same time. And custom login, click off, highlight this one, Control D, and what was the other one? Profile. All right, cool. So we have our pages being also in here. Header is already imported, so everything is the way I like it. Yeah, that's the way. I like it. Did I just do that? That's crazy. All right, anyway. All right, so now that we have the imports and we have our setup, now we're going to actually start bringing that stuff in here and create our routes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new instance of Okta authorization that uses the configuration we made earlier in the config file. So we're going to call it const Okta auth, right? And this is going to be nothing but a new Okta auth, which is this one, right? We're creating a new object from Okta auth. You could call it this just to make it simpler, but it could be named whatever. Like you could name it custom Okta auth if you wanted to. That's just a variable, so it could be anything you want it to be named. And then in here we're going to inject, as you can see, it accepts one argument, which is going to be your Okta auth options, which is your configs basically. So we're going to bring the configs in there as an argument. Now what we're doing here is we're making a call to the Okta auth function in here, and we're passing the configurations in here. We are basically making a copy of that entire thing into here. We're not modifying it. We're making a copy. We're creating a new copy of it into here so that we can use this somewhere else. All right, so now we have our here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to also do basically what we just did up here, but our history with our history hook. And the reason why we need this is because the use history allows our application to link to other pages and to other routes and redirect to other routes and things like that. So we need to be able to have access to the use history to do that. This is part of the router, and we're just going to create a hook line here, a hook class, not class, a hook variable called history, so that way you can just call it by, hey, history dot do this, history dot do that, right? And so yeah, we got that. So now even okay, so now we're gonna go into our return in here. We're gonna change this div here with security. All right, so that implements, this security here implements a wrapper on the route that is going to make sure that you add security to your application. Now if you hover over it just like I did, I have a delay on my hover. Your hover is probably like right away. Mine is a little delayed. You see here that it takes a few props, like you need to inject Okta auth, you need to inject restore original URI with the restore original URI function that you're going to do. You need to have unauth required, which is optional. That's why it has that little thing here, the question mark. It means that it's optional. And then a function that is going to be called on this prop, and children, which is also going to be optional. And we're not going to use children actually, but we are going to use these three right here. So I'm going to highlight all of this, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to come here and I'm going to paste it in there. Don't worry, I know it's freaky, but it's because it's not it's not done right. All right, I just wanted to make sure I copy it there so it's not, so I can change it. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change that to an equal and wrap this into parentheses. I'm gonna do that same thing to this, and put that in parentheses. I don't need that, and I don't need that. Excuse me. And then the last one is going to be both of these right here, and I'm going to put that into parentheses, not parentheses, squiggly brackets, I'm sorry. All right, so now this is the way it should work, and I'm going to get this function out and this function here out. These are just names, okay? So now you can see that the Okta auth is equal to this Okta auth, okay? So this Okta auth is going to be injected by this Okta auth that I created. So I'm gonna put that in there. So now that is calling, so now again explaining this Okta auth is going to accept as an argument all of the Okta configurations that we created in the config file, which is going to be stored in here, and then it's going to be passed into this so that security can access it. So it's a movement of props. It's moving from there to there to there to there to there. I know, but hey, that's the way things work. All right, so now we have these two options in here that we haven't built. These functions right here, we haven't built these functions. So we need a restore original URI function for whenever something goes wrong, you want to make sure that that it doesn't break and that it lands, it puts the user on the login page basically. And then the unauth require, which is optional, but we like that. I like it. And basically what it does is it defines, or it creates a route to the login page if something is required to be authorized, required authorization for it. All right, so so we're gonna call this on restore original URI. So we're gonna do, I like to use a little what's a camel case, I think it's called. Let's start this one there, on require. So the on require, we're gonna create the function just like any any arrow function, and we're gonna create it in there, and make sure, yep, okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make use of our history hook right here, and we wanted to go history dot push, and then what we're going to do is we're going to push that route to go to login. All right, so if authorization is required, if anything inside here, which we haven't added to it yet, if any of the routes that are going to be in here are going to be required, it's going to need an authorization required, it's going to then push that route into this page, into the login page. That's not right. Yeah, into the login page. Okay. All right, and then now we need to create this one here, which is similar. It's going to be a const Is it gonna to? No, it didn't. I was hoping that it would create I think there is one that I have for just like that have the RAFCE whatever that I created. It kind of built the stuff out for me. I think I have one for functions too, but not exactly sure. All right, so this is gonna have an arrow function in here as well. Now this is gonna take a couple of props in here, a couple of arguments. So this is going to take Okta auth. You notice I'm putting a little underscore in front of it. It's because it's a little bit different. It's not this one. It's one that I am creating for it. And then original URI. Yeah, original URI. All right, so I'm gonna pass these two props in there, and then inside here I'm gonna say history, and then replace to relative URL, and that's going to take a couple of parameters in there, to original URI or the root of the file, and then the other parameter, which is basically going to be my window dot location dot origin. So what this does is, instead of hard coding localhost 3000 or whatever, I'm making it read the window location origin, so that way you can use this on production and it will automatically read the name of your domain up there. Instead of saying localhost 3000, it will say www.mydomain.com. all right, so that's done, I believe. Yep, that's done, and you can see that it all works out right here. Let's go ahead and save for now, just so we can have it, so you can have it working. But the next thing that we're going to be doing is creating the actual routes inside our box here. So yeah, don't worry about this right here. This means this is just warnings telling you that you have some stuff here that you haven't used yet. So don't worry about that. Eventually we're gonna get to that part. All right, so let me see, making sure that we are on track. All right, so I am actually not going to need a container in here, so I'm just gonna get rid of that. And we're going to use a switch, and so the switch is basically an instruction for the router to switch from routes depending on the links, depending on what you're clicking on. So that's all it really does. And then in there we're gonna start creating our routes. So I'm gonna put it like that, like this, and then we're gonna create a few routes. So I'm gonna put them in here. I think it's 4 of them, right? But there's one that is going to be secure. It's going to be the profile. But let's do one at a time. So my first route is going to be the home page, right? You want the person to land on a home page, on a landing page, and it needs to be just a simple route, because it can't have any security or anything. Otherwise, no one is going to be able to land anywhere. So something has to be completely unsecure, and that's going to be the main route, the root, which is going to always be /, and that's it. That means it's the very home, and it's The forward slash is basically nothing. It gets omitted, so it's not gonna be that. See, it's not gonna be that. It's just gonna be this. All right, and then that is going to be an exact. You want it to be called an exact route, and then you're just going to use a component, and that component is going to be home. So I'm basically saying whenever the user goes to the root URL, use this route right here and use the code that I'm putting in the component home, in this home component, which is going to be this one, which we haven't done yet, right? So when that happens, when I finish that, this right here should change to home. All right, so let's see, let's go back to this. All right, I took out the containers, so I'm just gonna take it out of here as well to get rid of that. All right, so the next thing that we're going to need is we're now going to need a path for what happens when someone lands in the wrong place. Actually, no, let's do the login path. All right, so the path is going for login is going to be, let's do everything. You know what? Let's do double quotes. I feel more comfortable when I'm dealing with paths. I feel more comfortable with that, with double quotes. All right, so we're gonna use the login just basically, but here let's do this a little different here. Let's do it like this. All right. So now here we're gonna do something a little bit different. Instead of using a component, calling a component like that, because we have props that eventually we're going to be needing from there and things like that, I'd rather just use it as a render. So I'm gonna put a render, and the render is basically then is going to use an anonymous function. Basically, it's a function without a name. A function like this, but without this part, without a name. So that's what makes it an anonymous function. And that's going to be the custom login. Yeah, like that. Cool. So now this is basically going to do the same thing as this, but it's doing it in this way. So it's a little different way of adding the component to the route, but it does the exact same thing. So this is basically saying that when I get to the login, load this component, which is going to be this one, and then in there will be stuff that we're going to put eventually for the login. All right, and then the next one that we're going to use is going to be the login callback. So like if someone tries to log into the profile, which is going to be a secure route, we'll do that later, or into any page that is authorized, but they're not logged in, you want to do a login redirect, a login callback. So for this one, the path, we have to define a path anyway, and it's going to be login callback. And if you remember, that is defined here, login callback. And then here we're gonna do a render just like this one, but instead of calling the custom login page, we're gonna call the login callback, and we're going to pass some props. We're gonna use the spread operator to spread out the props, and we're gonna pass the props in there as part of an argument. And we're going to make sure that we define the props in here. All right, so that's going to, yeah, all right. Now, the one last thing that we need to do here is we need to call unauth resume. So what this does, unauth resume, it basically instructs this route on what it needs to do once the login was successful. So if this path what redirects you if you try to access a page that you weren't authorized to access, but so it brings you to the login and it brings the props with you, but once you get there, then you eventually log in, it needs to resume. It needs to take you back to where you were trying to go. So what we're going to do there is we're going to on auth resume, we're going to create another function, and we're going to call it on auth resume. So what are we going to do to that is basically the same thing as the const require. We're going to just, actually, you know what, let me paste that, and let's copy this and then cut this out and replace it for that. So that way it's an exact copy of this. There's the exact same thing. I wanted to do the exact same thing. Now, technically, this is redundancy. I could have just, for example, used this same function here and put it there, and that's it. Then I don't need this at all. But I like to keep them separate because eventually I want to, if I want to expand, if I want to build this application bigger, I want to be able to add more instructions here that are not necessarily going to be in this one. So if I use this for both places, it's going to happen, whatever instructions I add to that function is going to happen here, but it's also going to happen here, and I don't want that. I want to keep this separated. So for that, I am going to keep this function for this one, so that way this stuff happens only here, and then this stuff here, which is obviously that's wrong, there you go, and then this stuff here only happens here, not anywhere else. Make sense? All right, it just looks weird right now that they are the same. So all right, so one last thing we need to do to finish out the routes is to finish our profile route. Our profile route is going to be a little bit different because our profile route is a secure page. So in this one, we're going to put secure route. Now, everything else on here is going to be exactly the same as this right here. So we're going to do, except for without the exact. So the path for this is going to be, I promise we're almost done with this video. Path, and then component is going to use the profile component. All right, so if everything is done right, then we already have used everything that we needed to use. Everything is working perfectly. Go ahead and close that. Okay, good. I'm gonna save it. And now when I save it, if I go to my application, I am at the home page. Therefore, there is home because I'm here. If I use login, I should be able to end up in login. So if I go to login, my route will show custom login because that's what my login is. But if I go to profile, you see it ended up back in login again. It didn't allow me to go into my profile page right here because it's a secure route. Cool. So we're working. I mean, it's working. It really is, but there's still a little bit more to it. I have to actually add a form, and I have to validate that form with the user to make sure that the user is allowed to be, and I have to be able to show the profile page. So we're kind of halfway there. We're already showing that security is working, but now we actually have to allow people to pass security, to be validated. All right, so we're gonna do that in the next videos. For right now, I think this one has gone on a little bit long, so we're gonna stop it right here. We've done a lot, so yeah, let's keep on going. All right, see you soon.